Hey there YouTube, Travis here, and oh, wait a minute. This is my very crusty Jawa 210. Okay, look what the cat dragged in. So yes, this is a Jawa 210, and hey, check it out. It's only got 1,000 original miles. Unfortunately, not a single thing on this bike besides the steering actually moves. The wheels are completely frozen, the chain's completely frozen, the cable's frozen, the motor is absolutely frozen. This thing has probably been sitting outside a really long time, which is a shame actually, because this is a 1992 model. Pardon me, it's a 1991 model, but that still makes it the newest non-Tomos moped I've ever owned. Like, this is a proper vintage moped that was built in the 90s, and that's pretty neat. So this video is titled, What do you do with the unloved? What do you do with a bike like this? I'll do a little overview of the moped here as best I can with the knowledge I have, and then we'll talk about what do you do with projects like these that are, gosh, they're really far gone. All right, let's take a closer look at this thing. And this was the right price of free $99, so I got that going for me. It's generally complete. Obviously, we're missing the gas tank, which is a bummer, as is at least one side cover on this side. And the original air filter for this carb has been long replaced with this lawnmower-looking air filter thing. The flathead screws there are a big giveaway. But other than that, generally complete. Looking over this bike, it's super interesting. I love how there is factory fin dampeners to reduce noise. I'm guessing that's from the factory. That's pretty cool. Other things worth noting, whenever someone brings up a Jawa, they love to talk about this little guy right here, the thyristor ignition. And these, I think for a long time, until probably the early days of the internet, these were kind of a mystery box for people. Today, there's a lot of resources for them. You can buy new ones. There's actually a wiki page on Moped Army to rebuild one of these, or really to make your own, because they're really quite simple. It's an example of an early CDI. I've read that it's actually the very first moped to have some sort of capacitor-based electronic ignition, which is pretty cool. Pretty simple. As the flywheel rotates, it builds up some charge, and when it hits the right voltage, it sends it through the capacitor and it produces the spark. Pretty simple, and I think it's neat. You could build your own if you wanted to, but I think some people they have a bad taste in their mouth because of this, but it seems like it's a pretty simple system. Other things worth mentioning about it, well, it's got two-chain design, kind of like a Puch in some ways. We have a lot of CEV components on it, kind of like a lot of Italian bikes, the switches, the headlight, a couple other little noticeable pieces in here. You saw on the other side there is a belt for the transmission. Final drive, though, is regular old chain. Got some nice adjusters here, not the snail style, so it's got that going for it. And I looked into what it would take to rebuild an engine like this. It actually uses pretty standard, like 6202 C3 bearings and some seals that seem pretty readily available, which is nice. There's definitely some evidence of some farm fixes here and there, like your classic welded on pedal, the aforementioned air filter. But again, other than that, it seems pretty original, which is cool. The tires on it are Changshin tires. I don't know if it would have come with those, because this is from the 90s. Those were a popular tire in the 1980s. It could be a replacement, but I'm guessing it could be original. So the big question is, what do you even do with a bike in this condition? It came here all the way from Czechoslovakia. Didn't seem it lived that long of a life, but we got to do something with it. First thing that comes to mind is, well, part it out. There's probably a need for parts off of these. You can't save all of them. Some have to be cannibalized for others to live. It makes sense, but there's not really that many usable parts on this. It's a frame without any title or paperwork. Possibly the wheels if you cleaned them up, and maybe some engine cases, but I don't think there's that much else on here that's really all that usable. So next option would be, okay, rebuild it. I've done a couple of these, usually Pooks or more popular mopeds where they've just been absolute pieces of crust. And they've been turned into daily beaters, daily riders. With the Jawa though, unfortunately, parts are still kind of hard to come by. Treatland has parts, there's Jawa Shop. And you can get stock replacement parts, but if you rebuild it, you still have a 25 to 30 mile per hour bike. When we look at cylinder kits, it's kind of vague. Definitely not anything available stateside. Looking at Europe, there's at least one aftermarket cylinder kit that would fit this engine, but it's going to be quite expensive to get here. And even reading online, people talk about things like, okay, well, they sold like size 10 overbore for like when the piston and cylinder get worn out and out of round, you bore it to the next size up. You could get like size number 10 overbore, and that's kind of like a kit, which I think that's really interesting. But again, what real power can you make out of it? You would still just have a stock moped for quite a lot of work. The other thought is engine swap it. So yes, the motor is certainly one big crusty piece. Certainly the internals are not going to be great either, so it would be quite a task to do a full rebuild on it, but why not get something like a 4-stroke Lifan 125 engine, or even another classic 2-stroke engine to put in here. Totally could. There's definitely a lot of spare engines around there. Unfortunately, you're still dealing with the fact you've got, very small moped brakes, you've got this very small frame, you've got very small rear shocks and front suspension. Is this really the best candidate for an engine swap? And then there's the final option, which is, well, do nothing for now, but keep an eye out. There may be another crusty Jawa that pops up for sale locally, or a friend of a friend has, which is how this bike came into my life. And maybe there's an opportunity to take two and make one. Maybe you get one that's been in a wreck and the engine turns over. Or maybe you just come across one that, again, it's got the missing pieces that this one can fill, and maybe you can make a bike out of it. Or, as you get bored over the next year or two, every once in a while, come by and just do one little thing on this bike. So it might be freeing up the wheels, so I can actually roll this around the carport, which is probably a pretty high priority, as dragging this thing around is not fun. But just do one thing to it every once in a while. Mopeds are inherently very simple. It's even something like this doesn't take too much to get them kind of back to life. So that's an idea too. And I think that's where I'm leaning. But love to get your thoughts. Post a comment of those 4 options. What do you think is the appropriate fit for a type of bike like this in this condition? Super curious to read. I still love mopeds. It's really fascinating. It's still extremely simple and an accessible hobby for anybody. So there's a lot of different ways that, me or someone else could take this. So love to get your thoughts. I think that's all there really is to say for now on this Jawa 210. Okay there, YouTube. Until next time.